Week 1 is finally upon us. No more free agency, no more draft, no more fake trade scenarios. It is time to play football. So in this video, I am about to give you an in-depth deep dive into Panthers versus Falcons Week 1. We are going to get into the storylines, questions that need to be answered, key matchups, and I'm ultimately going to give you my final prediction for how this game is going to shake out. And we are going to get into all of that right after this.
I'm from the foe, you dig?
Welcome to The Way I See It with Jamario Rashad. This is a Carolina Panthers fan channel. Please do me a favor by hitting the like button, and please make sure you subscribe as I am on my road to 3K, trying to make sure my channel continues to grow all the way throughout this season. Now that that's out of the way, let's go ahead and get to Week 1, Panthers at Falcons. So the top storylines heading into this game. What is everybody talking about? What is the buzz about? What is everybody tweeting about? Well, I would be remiss, and everybody already knows that I have to mention that this is going to be Bryce Young's debut regular season game. Ever since he walked across that stage at the NFL draft, at the 2023 NFL draft, there has been nothing but question after question after question as to what is his durability going to be like. How is he going to be able to perform at such a miniature size as many would deem him? What is he going to be able to do in the NFL? Well, I believe all the lights are going to be on and all the eyes around the NFL are going to be tuned in to see what this year's #1 overall draft pick is going to be able to do in his first game. Is this offensive line that struggled tremendously through the 3 games in the preseason, are they going to be able to protect Bryce Young? Is he going to be able to see over his linemen and be able to create passing lanes and actually complete passes over the middle of the field? We will see all of those things. Is he going to be able to absorb the hits? Is he going to be able to, may he get hurt, knock on wood? We all want to see, but we all know that it is going to shake down, and it is all going to shake out in just a few days coming up here. Now, the second storyline that is going into this game is the official rematch of Bryce Young versus Desmond Ridder. Bryce Young and the Alabama Crimson Tide absolutely dismantled Cincinnati in the 2021 Cotton Bowl in Bryce Young's Heisman campaign, where he did unfortunately lose the national championship to the Georgia Bulldogs. But in the game prior to that, he went up against a Desmond Ridder-led Cincinnati Bearcats, and they absolutely got demolished. As you can see, their overall output in terms of yardage was only off by about 40 yards, but in terms of what they were able to put up on the board, it was just day and night. Bryce Young, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, to Desmond Ridder only having 144 yards total. No touchdown, no picks, only putting 6 points on the board. Now, Desmond Ridder has went on Good Morning Football. He has made comments about how he is looking forward to this rematch with Bryce Young. There are so many people that will make the case that, well, he was just so overwhelmed in in terms of talent. The Bearcats just didn't even deserve to be in that game against the Alabama Crimson Tide. But now both of these guys are in the NFL, and both sides of the field are pretty much looking even. So with the odds being not stacked in anyone else's favor, let's see how Desmond Ridder versus Bryce Young Part 2 is going to shake out. I'm pretty sure many college football fans are excited to see how this is going to shake out, man. So next we move into our next big storyline, and this is one that I believe that hasn't been harped on by my timeline on Twitter, or I haven't seen any of the local Panthers reporters or the blogs talk about this very much, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that the Carolina Panthers have a very, very rare opportunity to go out in this year and start their season with 2 games against divisional opponents, where if they are able to be successful in both of those games, that gives them a tremendous edge at the beginning of the season to not only build a lead in terms of overall record, but start off as the official division leader, having 2 division games won over 2 division opponents, that is starting out a season that has hopeful playoff implications at the end of it. That is starting off a season excellent, and if we are able to pull those things off, that speaks volumes for how this team will be able to perform, and it gives a very good indication as to what it will come down to in terms of playoff implications at the end of the season. We do not have any other division games, any other rival games until early in December. So we will play the majority of our season out with a 2-game lead in the division if we are able to seize control of this very first game against the Atlanta Falcons here in week 1, and then take that same momentum into week 2 against the New Orleans Saints. But first, we have to get it done today. But I cannot help but mention that this is a very rare opportunity to jump out ahead in the division and get started on that playoff chase very early in the year, man. So now, those are all of the storylines that I believe will be heavily covered moving into this game, and probably at the conclusion of it as well. So now we move into 4 questions that I believe that the Carolina Panthers will finally be able to have answered after a long drawn-out offseason with such great turnover on the roster. There being a new coaching staff on both sides of the ball, there being a new quarterback, there being like more than half of the team has been overturned with new players. These are 4 questions that I believe will be answered in this very first game that will give us a better understanding of how this season will shake out as it progresses. Now, the first thing that we are going to have answered in this first game against the Atlanta Falcons is, was the offensive and defensive play calling in the preseason truly vanilla? Vanilla was the word that kept being thrown around as the offense and the defense went out there. Well, the starters most specifically went out there on the field in in at least 2 of the 3 games in the preseason and looked absolutely atrocious. They couldn't stop anybody, and they couldn't move the ball down the field. It was said just the other day by head coach Frank Reich that because a reporter, I can't remember who asked or brought up the fact that we couldn't get a good sense of how the offense or the defense is going to look through 3 games in the preseason. Frank Reich said that was by design, and that was good. So now that we are actually going to get out there and we are going to play, an entire football game, starters are going to be out there the majority of the time. We will see if that play calling that we saw in the preseason was any type of precursor to what we're going to see in the regular season, or did they actually hide their schemes? Did they hide all of the tricks? Was it just vanilla? Did they just go out there and put a plain game plan together each and every week to be able to hide the goodies, for lack of a better term in this moment, against the Atlanta Falcons, who were most definitely watching these games in preparation for week 1? Ejiro Evero was brought in as an all-star defensive coordinator, having also been interviewed for a head coaching job here before Frank Reich was eventually given the position. This guy was brought in and is seen as a tremendous piece that any team around the league would want. But throughout the preseason, his defense did not look good in any way, shape, or form. Hopefully that was just a symptom of, again, being vanilla as Coach Reich explained it. But we will officially get to see how that shakes out when Ejiro Evero's defense takes the field this upcoming Sunday, man. So the next question that will most certainly need to be answered is, which one of these young guys is going to be the one that steps up this year? As of right now, as it stands at the time of the recording of this video, Brian Burns is still in contract disputes with the Carolina Panthers, but I do expect that he will, if not even signed by Sunday, I don't expect him to sit out. So this is more so in reference to the fact that Marquise Haynes was moved to IR, so he is going to be out for the first 4 weeks of this NFL season. Marquise Haynes was the primary backup pass rusher behind Brian Burns, as well as Justin Houston, whichever one would come off the field first. I assume I assume Marquise Haynes would go in to cover those snaps for them. With Marquise Haynes being out, that leaves those snaps to be divvied up by the likes of a second-year 6th-round pick who I have a lot of promise in, that showed immense flashes in the preseason, was undoubtedly the best pass rusher we had in Amari Barno. We have much maligned, much frowned upon, I think 4th-year guy now, Yetur Gross-Matos, who is going through an entire position change, who has been struggling to say the least. And then we finally have our rookie 3rd-round pick, DJ Johnson, who did not show any flashes of any ability to actually be an effective pass rusher in the preseason whatsoever, although majority of his snaps did more so call for him to be a run defender that set the edge at that outside linebacker position. With Marquise Haynes being out for these 4 games, one of these 3 guys is going to have to emerge as a dependable piece that Ejiro Evero can call upon to go in there and go get the quarterback when one of our top guys is out. And with this game, and in this game in Atlanta, I believe that will be apparent, almost instantly. The defenses usually come together a lot faster than offenses do. So if Amari Barno is able to flash the way that I think he'll flash, my guess is that it will be him. But one of these 3 guys will in fact have to step up if we want our defense to generate any type of consistent pressure. Now, this is the 3rd question, and I'm pretty sure this is one that most people are most interested in. How is the chemistry between Jonathan Mingo and Bryce Young going to look early? A lot of people did not anticipate that Jonathan Mingo was going to be a starter day one. Of course, we brought in Adam Thielen. We brought in DJ Chark. Those guys seemingly going to be the unquestioned starters, at least on the boundary. Mingo's best shot to be a starter was to be that 3rd guy, maybe playing in the slot when the scheme and the play call calls for it. But with DJ Chark probably being out for week 1, Jonathan Mingo is slotted in as a starter. And him being drafted in the very next round after Bryce Young, myself and many other Panthers fans would like for this to be the first game in a long game of Panthers lore that just spells out the greatness that this duo is going to be able to propel upon the NFL for years to come. If we are able to get Jonathan Mingo ingratiated early, if that chemistry that these 2 guys have been trying to create ever since maybe a week or a day so after the draft, where they met up, they've been throwing and running routes together, all of this stuff for months now. If all of those things are able to culminate in chemistry on the field, we will possibly be looking at the greatest combination of a passing duo that we've seen here since Cam and Greg Olsen. So this first game is going to give us a glance into what's to come. Not to say that if they struggle, that means that it's going to be terrible, but they will most definitely be ones to watch if they are at least able to show flashes in this very first game. Now, the final question that we are looking to have answered in this Atlanta versus Panthers game in week 1 that is very important to myself, and I'm pretty sure that it's important to other Panthers fans. Yes, I'm off the screen now. I had to get all my graphics up here. But the question of how will Jaycee Horn be used? Now, last year, defensive coordinator Ejiro Evero was the defensive coordinator for the Denver Broncos, and in doing so, he coached all-pro cornerback Pat Surtain II, who was only in his 2nd year in the NFL last year, to Pro Bowl, all-pro standings, like almost instantaneously. Now, there has been debate between which one of these 2 guys is better and has been better since before the 2021 draft even took place. Both of these guys were selected ahead of Justin Fields by their respective teams, but it only seems as though one of these guys gets the respect as a lockdown corner, which is what any cornerback taken in the top 10 picks of the NFL draft should look to be. Nobody wants to draft, just a gadget guy, for lack of a better term. So what I want to bring your attention to is the graphics on the screen, which shows their slot rate, their shadow rate, their snap shares, and their primary and the receiver that they primarily covered. Now, Surtain shadowed the opposing team's best receiver on an average of 48% of the time on 1,106 snaps. That is, when you look at that as opposed to Horn, who shadowed the opposing team's best receiver only 44% of the time on 812 snaps, you can see that that Phil Snow or Al Holcomb, whoever was calling the defensive plays last year, did not have a scheme that called for Jaycee Horn to be used as a guy that was primarily locked in to the opposing team's best wide receiver, whose only assignment was to make sure that guy was locked up. Opposing cornerbacks usually stay on the boundary because that is where the best wide receivers, be it the best X and Y wide receivers, usually occupy the boundaries, trying to eat up space that isn't in the middle and creating one-on-one situations. Jaycee Horn spent almost 20% of his snaps guarding a wide receiver that is in the slot. That being compared to Pat Surtain, who only spent 0.6, that is less than 1% of his time in the slot, guarding the interior wide receivers. That just shows that these two guys that were thought to be at least somewhat equal in ability, it shows that they have been used in different ways, and that speaks to why many Panthers fans have had such frustration. Aside from just the injury history with Jaycee Horn, they've had issue with the way that he's been used, by saying that he is very rarely assigned to the opposing team's best player, and this graphic right here actually backs that up and shows that he hasn't necessarily been hidden by the previous regime, but he hasn't been challenged as much as somebody of his skill set and his projected level of play would usually be challenged. So it's very interesting to see if Evero will be able to make Jaycee Horn or get Jaycee Horn to Pat Surtain levels of play, or if he has a completely different role for him altogether, maybe because he doesn't possess those lockdown skills after all. But we will see after this game, man. And now that comes to a conclusion, man, I'm going to bring you to my key matchups right after this little message that I have for you. Carolina Panthers Nation, this long drawn out offseason is officially coming to an end, and football is back. So for that reason, I want to provide you all with a brand new way to interact with your team. I call this Panthers Pick'em. So on a week-to-week basis, I will be providing you all with stat projections, and if you, yes you, can correctly guess 6 of my 8 projected numbers for our 8 starting players, you will enter yourself in an opportunity to win $20 by way of Zelle, Cash App, or your payment method of choice. All you have to do is be a subscriber and comment on my most recent community post where I posted these projected numbers. And if you, yes you, can correctly guess 6 of these 8 projected numbers over or under, you will enter yourself for the opportunity to win a free $20. So for that reason, you should go ahead and get that done. And now that that's out of the way, I want to thank you for watching this breakdown and get you back to the video. Peace. All right, so now this is the juicy stuff. We are going to talk about who are the guys that are going to make it happen. Who are the X factors? The X factors being who are going to be the players involved in the key matchups that have the greatest outcome or the greatest determination on the outcome of the game. The first that we are going to talk about is none other than our starting right guard rookie Chandler Zavala versus defensive tackle Grady Jarrett. Now, similar to our starting left tackle Ike Ekwonu, Zavala's first game in the NFL is going to be one that is against a man that is very much so battle tested. Just like Ike's very first game was against Myles Garrett last year, Zavala just may have times throughout this game where he gets beat, where the veteran experience just overtakes his youth and athleticism strictly because of the been there, done that factor, and Grady Jarrett may get the best of him. But as Ike Ekwonu did do throughout the duration of his first game last season, I do expect that Zavala will continuously get better throughout the game. Youth hopefully will come into tact if this game goes into the fourth quarter, where he's able to just physically outlast the guy, the likes of a Grady Jarrett, who is a former two-time Pro Bowler but hasn't been so over the last 2 years. There has been slight fall off, but that is for a various number of reasons, not necessarily just because that guy has declined. So Chandler Zavala missed all of training camp, and I believe he only played in the final preseason game before being deemed the starter at this position. That just speaks to how much confidence that head coach Frank Reich has in him, but also how much confidence that offensive line coach James Campen has in him, to only have seen him for a limited number of times, but also had been in the war room when this guy was drafted, and visibly had just shown the adoration that he had when that pick was made. You can only imagine that this is a James Campen endorsee, and that is why he is being moved into this spot. Now, Chandler Zavala will be challenged in not only just the pass protection game. Grady Jarrett is also somebody that makes a big impact in the run game as well. Last year in 2022, Grady Jarrett had 61 tackles, 6 sacks, 12 tackles for loss, as well as 17 QB hits. So in both facets of blocking, be it pass blocking and run blocking, Grady Jarrett does stand to be a very valuable test for Chandler Zavala so early in his career, especially this being his first game. So if he can hold his own throughout this game, not just completely get bullied by the veteran in Grady Jarrett, and keep Bryce Young upright, I believe the Carolina Panthers stand a great chance of having a positive offensive output and not seeing the struggles with the offensive line that we saw in the first 2 games without Chandler Zavala. We don't want any of those things to come back and haunt us in this game. So now we're going to move into the second of our offensive key matchups, that being Adam Thielen versus AJ Terrell. Now, I've said this all off season. I got so much pushback for it. It's so many people just, I don't want to call it wishful thinking because that sounds a little condescending, but I'm going to say it was wishful thinking for so many people to just assume that Terrace Marshall Jr. was going to take such a tremendous leap, that he was going to be a number 1 wide receiver, so much so that he would overshadow Adam Thielen, a former All-Pro, Pro Bowler, a guy that has 10 plus years of experience in this league. I don't know what convinced people that would happen, but I was always on the train of Adam Thielen is going to be the number 1, and he proved that in the preseason. He also proved that he is more than likely going to be Bryce Young's favorite target, as he is one of the only wide receivers that can at least somewhat create separation, especially while DJ Chark is out. Now, AJ Terrell is coming off an up and down season. I, for one, think AJ Terrell is one of the better corners in the NFL, but ebbs and flows, things happen. If your team struggles, you're not always going to shine. So he is coming off a season where he allowed for a 56% completion percentage when targeted, a 102 passer rating, and 6 touchdowns. But I believe if Thielen can just create a little bit of separation in combination with the pinpoint accuracy and the early play clock processing of Bryce Young, I believe that if he gets the better of AJ Terrell, that is going to speak volumes for our offense, giving us the opportunity to be able to put the ball in the air and not solely rely on the legs of Miles Sanders and Chuba Hubbard. So Adam Thielen versus AJ Terrell is the second of my offensive key matchups for this game. Now, finally, we are going to move into just two more matchups, those being on the defensive side of the ball. First up being linebacker Shaq Thompson versus rookie running back Bijon Robinson. Now, with the unknown of Desmond Ridder, him only playing about 3 or 4 games during the tail end of the season last year for the Atlanta Falcons, he's pretty much still going into his rookie season here. And with him not being a high draft pick, there not being very much anticipation of what his output is going to be this upcoming season, Bijan Robinson undoubtedly will be the engine behind this offense. And in this upcoming game, Shaq Thompson being the quarterback of this defense, being the one that is in charge of real-time in-game adjustments when the play clock is winding down, it is going to be a chess match between he and Bijan Robinson to determine whether or not this Atlanta Falcons run game does or does not dominate my Carolina Panthers. Now, as I mentioned, Shaq Thompson is going to be the one that is going to be in charge of the checks, in charge of the defensive audibles, but more so on the physical side of the ball, being the inside backer. He is that second line of defense after the defensive line that is in charge of filling the gaps and making sure that Bijan Robinson, when tackled, not only is hit, he does not fall forward, but he actually goes to the ground and does not gain any extra yards, because that is when you get yourself in those third and shorter, second and short situations, even when you feel like you make a good play on the ball, when you allow for a good back like Robinson to just continue to keep the legs churning. It is going to be Shaq's responsibility to be the first man there, get his helmet on Bijan's helmet, stop him in his tracks, and make sure that he does not take over the game. And that, if that happens, I believe there's honestly pretty much nothing that the Atlanta Falcons are going to be able to do offensively to impact my Carolina Panthers, as I believe we'll pretty much just be dominating at that point, because I don't believe in Desmond Ridder. So now, the final matchup of this video before we get to my final predictions and I tell you how I think this entire game is going to shake out, let's talk about Vonn Bell versus Kyle Pitts. Now, Bell will be tasked with guarding, in my opinion, the most dangerous receiving threat on the Atlanta Falcons team. I know a lot of people have faith that Drake London is going to be somebody, that he is going to progress, that he's going to be a really good wide receiver. As of right now, as it stands today, he is not better than Kyle Pitts, even though Kyle Pitts is a tight end. If Kyle Pitts was a wide receiver, Drake London ain't better than him. So now, in the game last year, Kyle Pitts had one of his best games of the season, scoring one of his very few touchdowns, having nearly 100 yards against the Carolina Panthers in a game that we ultimately lost, that had playoff implications, that the entire season could have just shaken out differently had we just guarded this guy a little bit better in the first half of this game. So now that Vonn Bell is on this roster and we are running this 3-4 system, I truly believe that a combination of him and Jeremy Chinn will be the ones that are in charge of guarding him, especially in nickel situations. And if they are able, or if Vonn specifically is able to keep Kyle Pitts in check and keep him from dominating the middle of the field, keeping that a no-fly zone and not allowing, and like just basically relegating him to being a check down safety blanket target for Desmond Ridder and not being an actual receiving threat down the field, I believe that that just speaks for overall shutdown of that offense. As I mentioned, if Shaq does his thing, we only really pretty much have one guy to worry about, that being Kyle Pitts. Jaycee Horn has shown that he can just pretty much lock down Drake London. Like, that's not a thing. He did it last year. I expect him to do it this year. That's why this matchup isn't here. But if we can keep Kyle Pitts in check, then that just pretty much speaks doom for that Atlanta Falcons offense, man. So now we have made it to the end of the video. My final prediction for week 1, Panthers versus Falcons. Carolina Panthers win 24-17. Bryce Young impresses in his in his first game, ends the game with 195 passing yards and 2 TDs with a 65% completion rate and 25 yards on the ground, bringing him to a grand total of 220 total all-purpose yards and 2 touchdowns and a victory in his very first game, man. So with that being said, that brings me to the end of this breakdown for week 1, Panthers versus Falcons, man. You all leave your predictions for the game down in the comment section. Whatever you all think about this breakdown, whatever you all think about the key matchups, the storylines, the questions that need to be answered, whatever you all think about this breakdown, let me know how you feel down below. If you made it all the way to this point in the video, I truly appreciate it. I know this is a longer form video that I don't usually do, but I am hyped about the season. I want to see how these longer form videos work out. I put over 20-25 hours of preparation into not only my notes, into producing the show, into producing the slides, into producing the frames that you see here. So hopefully this works out in the end, and this is content that you all enjoy. I know that, attention spans are a little shorter nowadays, but if you just listen to this on a drive while at work, hopefully this type of stuff interests you, man. But like I said, leave your comments down in the comment section. We are on to Atlanta, man. But until next time, I am Jamario Rashad. This is the way I see it, and I'm out. Peace.